As you are aware, under management of quality, we need to discuss several topics, and we have already discussed a few ones. And in these sessions, I will discuss a very important topic called leadership, quality, and benchmarking. I have already referred to the TQM framework. And under TQM framework, we say that the TQM framework rests on the 5 important pillars, so-called 5 important pillars you are already aware of. So these pillars are products, processes, organization, then you have the commitment, and the last one is the leadership. So today I am going to discuss the leadership aspect for quality. Now, the leadership is one of the least understood concepts in business. It has been interpreted in several ways, and there are the different definitions of leadership. Now, what we are interested in, that for establishing quality management systems in an organization, what kind of leadership you prefer in today's context. There are many theories of leadership we come across, and they have been developed by well-known experts and academics. But however, not a single approach adequately captures the essence of the concept. Like for example, whenever we talk about leadership style, we say whether it is a command and control or whether it is a participative management style. So this way we can refer to the leadership style. Similarly, the kinds of leadership we used to have for the manufacturing systems, or for that matter any systems those days, like in 19th century. Now those leaderships, the style of leadership is referred to as the type 1 leadership. In the next century, depending on the changes occurring in the organization style or the changes in the technology, changes in human behaviors and all, changes in the systems. So, but the different kinds of leadership we came across, and the people adopted, or the organizations adopted different kinds of leadership. That is referred to as the type 2. And today's context, they say that essentially it's a type 3 leadership or level 3 leaderships we are referring to, because the organizational systems have changed over the years, and in order to address the present issues, obviously level 3 leadership is required. Now the most definition of leaderships reflect an assortment of behaviors. For example, vision, there are several ways you can explain. Vision that stimulates hope, and mission that transforms hope into reality. Is it okay? So that's sort of the leadership style, whether you are having as a superior or as your the co-workers or the workmen. Stewardship that shepherds its resources. So resource mobilization is an important aspect. And the leadership, we say the leadership is very good when you have the ability to mobilize resources, to carry out certain tasks and to achieve certain objectives. Integration that drives its economy. That means sometimes, the leadership style should be such that it can integrate different aspects. And particularly when you talk about the TQM, if you refer to the TQM framework, the integration is a must, because several sorts of activities you need to carry out, several sorts of the approaches or the tools and techniques you need to apply at the same point in time or in a sequence at different points in time to solve the problems related to quality. And important factor is the communication that coordinates its efforts. Then we try to have say consensus that drives unity of purpose. Empowerment I have already mentioned that ultimate objective is of any TQM is to have employee empowerment. The empowerment that grants permission to make mistakes, encourages honesty to admit them, and gives the opportunity to learn from them. So this is very, very important, in fact. I mean, it's a self-learning process. You become highly self-motivated. So are you getting, are you getting such kind of leadership from the superiors or the person whom you report? Conviction that provides the stamina to continually strive towards business excellence. Obviously, you are on the path of continuous improvement. This point we have already mentioned. That means we have to move from the barren field to the green field, and obviously you must have a firm commitment and conviction that definitely you will take the path and you will reach your goal. When you think of leadership, we generally think of executive leadership. That means the kinds of leaderships you have at the strategic level, on the top management level, top executives, which focuses on the roles of senior managers. It's very clear in guiding an organization to fulfill its mission and meet its goals. Obviously, as a leader at the top, so you must have the ability to prepare the business plan, the perspective plan, means which kind of the direction the company will take. So these are the very important issues, and many a time you need to deal with highly unstructured problems. In the Baldrige criteria, later on we will come to know that this is an important quality standards that is called Baldrige Quality Awards is coming under Malcolm Baldrige Quality Award, and if you want to contest in this award, you want to have this award, obviously you to fulfill certain criteria. So in the Baldrige criteria, later on we'll study this aspect, as well as other frameworks such as ISO 9000, 9001 and Japan's Deming Prize. Leadership is the first category. Okay, so you can well understand that how important this aspect is. Specifically for quality related activities or tasks, certain aspects of leaderships we always emphasized. So that's why I've mentioned as leadership for quality. Now, what are the features you must have? What are the aspects you must concentrate on? Now, many activities that senior executives performs include the following. So what do you try to do? That means defining and communicating business directions. I've already mentioned that you have to create the business plan. Ensuring that goals and expectations are met. That means the kinds of activities you carry out, kinds of departments, kinds of functions you have created and you are leading them. Obviously, against each function for each task, you must be able to set the goals, and to what extent you are able to meet these goals. Reviewing business performance and taking appropriate action. Business performance, mainly we concentrate on two aspects. One is the operational performance and the second one is the financial performance. That means your leadership will be tested to what extent you are able to perform from the finance perspective and from the operational perspectives. Creating an enjoyable work environment. These days we talk about work environment, quality of work environment. So without without creating a quality environment, can you create a sustainable production systems? Probably you cannot. So the leadership must be able to create an enjoyable work environment. That means you feel at ease, and you as a workman, as an important as executive or the worker, you feel like contributing your your potential or your worth to the cause of the company. Creating an enjoyable work environment that promotes creativity, innovation and continual improvement. Soliciting input and feedback from customers, like it all rests on one concept called job satisfaction. So your leadership should be such that the people down the line, they must have the job satisfaction. This is a very challenging assignment. It's not that easy, but we also must know that when you reach that level of job satisfaction, okay, what kind of work environment promotes the job satisfaction, and obviously leadership is instrumental in creating such a work environment. Ensuring that employees are effective contributors to the business means whatever potential you have as an employee, to what extent you are able to contribute your worth to the cause of the company. Motivating, inspiring and energizing employees. So motivation is the key, and as ultimate test of leadership is to what extent you are able to, as a leader, you are able to make them self-motivated. Recognizing employees' contributions, employees' merit, employees' worth, that is very, very important, and providing honest feedback. That means that sort of information system support you must have. Now, in today's organizations, what do you need to have? That means in day by day, the system is becoming complex, more complex now. So a broader view of leadership you need to have. So what are these? That means formal organization leadership that is responsible for integrating, resourcing and orchestrating. That's a term we say, that is orchestrating. That is very, very vital. Orchestrating the activities of the various project teams. So this is very important. That means there must be proper rhythm in the system. And it's like, sometimes we refer to as the synchronized, the production system. Is it okay? Ad hoc leadership required within project teams. That means each project teams are working independently. So obviously, the person who is heading a project or who is a team leader, he must have the adequate leadership, the skill and the leadership style. Leadership in every member of every project team that incorporates the initiative, the self-management capacity. To what extent your project team becoming independent in thought and in action, and the sense of business responsibility that in the traditional organization were limited to the top people in the organization. Like sometimes we may get confused with the management style and the leadership style, and as such we say there is no concepts like right to manage. Traditionally we have the management group, we have the worker group, and we feel that this has been prominently observable, that whenever you talk about leadership, we feel that the so-called management team must have a leadership, whereas at the workers level, the workers level, the people will be working as per your instructions, so they don't need any leadership skill. But in today's context, what has happened, that everybody is given a job or the task which he or she must be able to carry out independently. This is the demand, and that's why you must have the leadership, the style or the leadership skill at all levels of an organization. Leaders are visionaries, is obvious. They manage for the future, not the past. That means they must have the adequate the knowledge, and they can foresee something. Is it okay? In the mindset, there could be the different scenarios, and they can think of those scenarios, and they can relate them to the possible causes and the possible conditions. Leaders empower employees the empowerment is the key. Empower employees to assume ownership of problems. That is very important. In fact, there will be problems, there will be mistakes, there will be errors, but you must own the responsibility, and to assume ownership of problems as well as the opportunities, and to be proactive in implementing improvements and making decisions in the best interests of the organizations. Leaders are not afraid to follow their intuition. There could be many ideas, intuitions and all. Finally, value congruence occurs when leaders integrate their values into the company's management system. That is very, very important. In fact, whenever you create a system, the certain values you have. Means what is that value, or what is the standard? Okay, does it have any ethical standards? Okay, what is the social relevance? So what we expect from a leader, that he must have a very clear idea about this, and he must believe in the scientific principles. Values are basic assumptions and beliefs about the nature of the business, mission, people, and relationships of an organization. So this is we focus on. Okay, so what kind of value systems he is believing in, and based on his or our value systems, okay, whether you are running the business, and what is your mission, and how do you nourish or nurture your subordinates, your systems. Okay, so this is very, very important. And specifically, values include trust and respect for individuals, openness, teamwork, integrity, and commitment to quality. So these are the the few important factors you may note down, like the trust and faith, respect for individuals, openness, open approach, and teamwork. That means the individual knowledge base may not be sufficient to address the problem. Most of the problems are becoming very, very complex in nature, and what we want some sort of a solution, some sort of a system which is sustainable. So obviously, the problem dimensions must be looked into from several dimensions, and so the teamwork is a must. Integrity and commitment to quality. This is a must. In fact, as I have already pointed out, the commitment is the resource commitment or the type commitment. There are different dimensions in commitment. As far as establishment of quality management is concerned, the time commitment as well as the resource commitment, these are the two very vital aspects in commitment. So the good leaders should lead for quality. That is, they should ensure that the principles of total quality are adopted. We are already aware of what are these principles and used throughout their organizations. Now, some actions may include the following. So what sort of, how do you prove that you are a good leader? So obviously your leadership will be judged by your subordinates, by your, your co-workers, the co-workmen, your colleagues, and they expect certain actions from you. So the first action is gathering data before expressing an opinion and backing up actions with facts. So that means unless and until you have the data, don't make any conclusions. And so this is a very important one. You have to collect data and you have to analyze the data in respect of certain perspectives. Then being aware that quality is defined by customers and acting on that awareness. Now here you may note down that there are the two kinds of customers. One is the internal customers and the other one is the external customers. Now when you look into these aspects, that means both internal customers as well as the external customers, okay, you must consider. It's not that only the external customer's interest you consider. Is it okay? Then the third important point is using quality tools. You are already aware of, like the 7 tools of quality management. I've also mentioned new 7 tools, so always you will be referring to those tools and techniques. And whenever you use a particular tool, you get certain information and from the data. And so using such quality tools when appropriate and making their benefits visible to all. That means at what point in time, which kind of information related to quality you require. Like say, if it is quality of design, you want to conclude about the level of quality of design, or the level of quality of conformance, or level of quality of performance. So what sort of data you require, what sort of what sort of quality tools, quality related tools you require to analyze this data, so that the appropriate information you get, and as per this information you conclude about these levels. Expecting and driving commitment and accountability throughout the organizations. Must be held accountable. That means definitely you take charge and you have the responsibility. You delegate the authority, but you just cannot delegate your responsibility. Okay. So true leaders promote quality and business performance excellence in several ways. I'll just highlight certain points. Like, they focus on creating and balancing value for customers and other stakeholders. We have talked about say extended process, and extended process we say that we must look into the interest of the customers, the suppliers, the employees, then the shareholders, as well as the community at large. So they are your stakeholders, and there could be the conflicting interest among the shareholders. So what you need to do, you have to create and balance value. That is important for customers and other stakeholders. That serves as a basis for setting business directions. Is important. You must not be the over biased to one particular say particular component in the, or say the element in this extended process. Like say, I am over biased to the customers, or I am over biased to say the suppliers. This must not happen. That means you must believe in the law of equity as far as possible, and accordingly you set your business direction and performance expectation at all levels of the organizations. Is it okay? That means at any point in time, T equals to T, you must consider the performance of all the stakeholders. Okay, vis-a-vis your organization and your leadership style. They create and sustain leadership system. That is very important. It's not that say it should be individual based. Yes, it starts with individual, but later on it becomes a part of the system. And whenever you try to distinguish between two organizations, obviously they can be distinguished, or they can be the differentiated, or with respect to their leadership style. So each company over the years, or each organizations over the years, it develops its own leadership style. Is it all right? It's unique, and that is in respect of with respect to a particular organization. It has history, its background and all. It becomes a unique one. So that point we should emphasize, and so that's why the leaders, they create and the sustained leadership system and environment for empowerment, innovation, agility. Okay, you must agile system must create, and organizational learning. Many a time you must create a condition where you need to be proactive. Okay, that is preferred. May not be possible in all respects, but definitely you must be proactive, so that for improving the say quality, or improving the quality management systems, you can opt for taking preventive measures. They set high expectations and demonstrate substantial personal commitment. That means it is at the individual level. We talk about the leadership style. So what is your commitment? You means the individual level. An involvement in quality, often with a missionary-like enthusiasm. That is very, very important. This is one, missionary-like enthusiasm. They integrate quality values into daily leadership and management and communicate extensively through the leadership structure and to all employees. Is it okay? They review organizational performance, I have already mentioned, including their own performance. This is very, very important in fact. As leaders, to assess organizational success and progress and translate review findings into priorities for improvement. That means what are the areas where you need to improve periodically, all the time, individual level, section level. Okay, so that's the departmental level. Is it okay? Function level that you do. And opportunities for innovation for the organization as a whole, as well as their own leadership effectiveness. They create an environment that fosters legal and ethical behavior, and a government system that addresses management and fiscal accountability. Fiscal accountability is very, very important. That means you are part of the state, and the state, the guided or the state specified the rules and regulations you have to follow. Okay, and so this way you can protect the interest of the stakeholders, and this is very, very important. So they integrate public responsibilities and community support into their business practices. As I already mentioned, the extended processes. Leadership is the driver of the entire quality system. Without leadership, these are the statements normally we make, we should be aware of. Without leadership, a total quality initiative simply becomes flavor of the month, the so-called flavor of the month, which is the major reason that the total quality efforts fail in many organizations. Okay, and effective leadership practice is built upon a sound foundation of organizational structure and theory. So if you refer to the proposed TQM framework, you will find that along with the leadership, we also emphasize on the organizational structure. So first you create the organizational structure, and organizational structure for any organization should be such that it promotes right kind of leadership. Is it okay? That's a very challenging assignment, and what kind of the structure you propose, that is very important. Leadership involves both people and measurement and control systems. Thus, it has both a soft side and a hard side. So, what are the theories we have? There are many theories. In fact, they are classified as the traditional leadership theories, and largely based on an assumption of rational thinking. That is first. Whereas the emerging leadership theory is built on or enlarged traditional theory by attempting to answer questions raised but not answered but earlier approaches. Is it okay? So these are answered. Leadership effectiveness can be improved with the correct mix of the leader style of management, the characteristics of those which are led, and the situation. So you may refer to attributional theory. Just giving you certain aspects in a short time frame. So those who are interested, they may go through such theories like attributional theory, transactional or charismatic theory, substitutes for leadership theory, applying leadership theory in a TQM environment. So these are the important reasons. Now I will benchmarking. I will do the benchmarking in the next session possibly. Isn't it? Is it okay? It's because the time is short. Okay, so the benchmarking part I will discuss in the next session. Okay, so thank you.